One of my favorite theories in Bungo Stray Dogs is that Dazai is going back to the Port Mafia. Hear me out though. We all know that one of the members from the Armed Detective Agency is going to have to transfer to the Port Mafia because of the agreement that Fukuzawa and Mori made. I personally 100% believe that the character that's going to be transferred to the Mafia is going to be Dazai. I mean, it makes the most sense, in my opinion, so let's narrow it down though. So Fukuzawa has already told Mori no to taking Yoshino. So Yoshino's already off the possibly going to the Mafia list. And I feel like if Mori were to try to take Rampo into the Mafia, Fukuzawa would probably do everything in his power to keep Rampo from going into the Mafia. Because like, father-son relationship, that's his son. He needs to protect his son. Atsushi, okay, there's two reasons I feel like Atsushi isn't going to go into the Mafia. I mean, one, Mori doesn't really seem to have any interest in him joining the Mafia, and two, he's the main character, so I personally think that it's very unlikely that he's going to be transferred to the Mafia. And Fukuzawa, of course, he's the one who made the agreement with Mori in the first place. He's also off the transfer to the Mafia list. Highly doubt that Mori would even want Fukuzawa in the Mafia because, well, Fukuzawa is the leader of the detective agency, and I feel like Mori would respect that and try to leave him alone so he can keep being the leader of the detective agency, but still. Mori doesn't also really show any interest towards Kenji Kunihita or Tanizaki, so I'm going to take them off the list. I'll put them on the maybe list. Very unlikely, but there's still a possibility. But we need to remember that there are two characters in the Armed Detective Agency that used to be in the Mafia. So it could possibly be one of those two. Mori might want one of them back. But who are those two characters? Dazai and Kyoka. I mean, Yoshino too. Technically, she wasn't in the Mafia, but she did work for Mori for a little bit. So I guess we can include her too. But I already took her off the list because Fukuzawa specifically told Mori no to her. But yeah, Kyoka was also in the Mafia. But the reason I don't think that it's going to be Kyoka that transfers to the Mafia is because, well, one, she wasn't in the Mafia for as long as Dazai was, and they don't really have a use for her in the Mafia anymore. And also, I feel like Atsushi would try to protect her from going into the Mafia too, in any way he can. So I feel like it's pretty unlikely. And also, Kyoka didn't really have much of an important job in the Mafia. Dazai, on the other hand, he did. He was in the Mafia for multiple years and had a pretty important job in the Mafia. So after narrowing it down, I feel like Dazai is the one who's most likely going to be transferred into the Port Mafia. And I also have other reasons for this too. Mori has actually even shown interest in Dazai joining the Port Mafia again. I mean, he literally wants Dazai to join the Mafia. He's asked him multiple times to join the Mafia and has also predicted that Dazai would be the leader of the Port Mafia by the time he was 23. Keep in mind, Dazai is currently 22. And Mori has even left Dazai's executive spot open. So, I mean, there's a likely possibility that Mori might actually request for Dazai to join the Mafia. And also, hear me out, after being arrested and being sent to prison, all the crimes he committed were made public, meaning the Armed Detective Agency likely wouldn't be able to take him back since he's a wanted criminal, and, well, that leaves the Mafia. The Mafia is probably the safest place for him to go since that's a criminal organization and, well, yeah. Dazai is also left out of a lot of the detective agency's events and meetings and all this, and other characters will even refer to everybody at the event or meeting as the whole agency, but Dazai wouldn't even be there. And there will be other times where characters will picture the whole agency and Dazai again wouldn't be there. There are also a lot of similarities between Dazai while he was in the Port Mafia and during the prison arc too. For example, his plans have been progressively getting more and more reckless as the series goes on, and during the prison arc, he literally killed guards and broke out of prison. And another thing that I feel like is a hint to Dazai going back into the Mafia are some of the intros and outros in the anime. In the season 5 outro, every character had a white background except for Dazai. His was red, and also his eye was even covered, like it was in the Mafia. I've also noticed that Dazai's eye has been covered a lot more recently in the anime too. I don't know if that's just pure coincidence or what, but it's been happening. In the season 1 intro, Mori is sitting in the boss's chair, but in the season 3 intro, it's empty. In the season 4 outro, Dazai takes his bolo tie off. I don't know if that's supposed to be symbolism for anything or he just does it just cuz, but it happens and I wanted to point it out. And last but not least, the most, I guess, iconic scene from a Bungo Stray Dogs intro or outro is Dazai jumping off the building in the season 1 intro. But I couldn't help but notice that it was the Port Mafia's building that he was jumping off of. Was this a coincidence or was all this on purpose? Another thing I want to point out is I feel like Dazai would volunteer himself to join the Port Mafia so that none of the other members of the detective agency would have to go to the mafia. Dazai's always been pretty self-sacrificial for the detective agency, so I feel like it would make sense. Dazai also mentioned during the Dark Era that everything he never wants to lose is always lost. This very likely applies to him working to be a good person for Oda. Let me explain. Dazai joined the detective agency after being in the mafia, and he's getting all these good things out of it and likely doesn't want to lose them. So all these good things that he's getting from being in the detective agency are probably going to be lost. I also feel like Sigma is going to end up being Dazai's replacement in the detective agency if Dazai does end up joining the Port Mafia again. Cause like, hear me out. Dazai and Sigma's relationship is kind of hard to analyze because they don't really have much time together and Sigma's only in a few chapters in Bungo Stray Dogs, but I'm gonna do the best I can. But keep in mind, Dazai saved Sigma from Fyodor and Nikolai during the prison arc, but he didn't really have a reason to because he was part of their little group, I guess. And Dazai also had the option to pick anything that would help him to escape the prison, but he chose Sigma instead. I feel like he did this because he saw something in Sigma, and I can't really say anything more about Dazai and Sigma because there's not really much development in their character dynamic yet, and I'd love to see that in future chapters. Sigma is alive, by the way. I'm gonna stay delusional. I mean, come on, it's Asagiri here. Broski cannot keep characters dead. But yeah, and also another thing I want to point out, back to the Dazai isn't included in everything thing I said earlier. This applies to Sigma being told about the detective agency, and guess what? Dazai was the only member who wasn't in the picture. I feel like Dazai going back to the mafia will also add to his character development and the plot development for Bungo Stray Dogs in general. And before anyone comes at me saying, oh well, Dazai can't join the mafia again because that's going to be breaking Oda's promise and he's not going to be a good person anymore. Guess what? Oda never said to leave the mafia. He only told Dazai to become a good person. While Oda was in the mafia, he was a good person. He didn't kill anyone. He took care of kids. Oda was a good person. So I feel like Dazai is going to do the same. Anyway, I think this is all I have on the whole Dazai going back to the mafia theory. I don't really have much more to yap about, but I'll definitely make more Dazai analysis videos later on in the future because he's like low-key my favorite character in Bungo Stray Dogs to analyze, him and Fyodor. So yeah, I'll definitely make more in the future.